So a quick just PSA. Obviously, this is for educational purposes only. We'll start with that, and then again, because we'll be viewing access logs, IP addresses will be seen. This is a live demo. I don't have a way of like blurring them out. Plus, that's kind of part of the treasure anyway, is getting certain information, and we'll go into that later. So again, you can participate in this up until certain points. I'll tell you specifically, hey, don't go here if you're worried about it. Don't go here. Don't log in. But in the meantime, obviously, if you're on a VPN or some sort of proxy or just don't care, then it is what it is. But just throwing it out there. Also, just stating that though people may see your IP, we have no way of actually knowing who you are or what that IP address, who that IP address belongs to. So again, just throwing it out there as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. This is stealing cookies with XSS, aka cross-site scripting. And this is just sort of an overview of how architecturally this sort of thing happens. We're going to sort of craft a malicious payload. We're going to inject that into a site that's vulnerable to that type of attack. And we're going to wait for a suspecting visitor. We will be using kind of stored XSS. We'll talk about that later. So we wait for a visitor to access that said site that's vulnerable, that has our payload, and then essentially from there, their session cookie will be sent to us, and we're going to grab that via a nice little thing that I found on the web, how to sort of send these things to an HTTP server to grab them, because there are ways you could just show someone a cookie. That doesn't do you any good. We want to actually get them. Again, educational purposes only. These are the sort of the steps, and I won't go into too much detail, but because YouTube can show you all of this stuff, and we'll reserve some time at the end of this to go over anyone stuck in certain places. But for now, we'll just kind of just chug through. So obviously, we're going to have our EC2 instance. This is what we need to set up a web server to catch said cookies. So obviously we need an EC2 instance. This is a pretty good video here. It's a little lengthy, but it's literally everything you need to know to set up an EC2 instance, and also how to log into it. Here, because we will be running Apache of some sort, here's basically how to install Apache or HTTPD. They're basically the same, because that's how we're going to catch said cookies. And we'll be basically monitoring the access log. The access log is basically a log that anyone accessing the website gets logged. I mean, your IP address, whatever your get, post, whatever you're doing, timestamps, your browser information, all that stuff, and that's all standard stuff that is always being logged. So it's not something that I set up some specific thing for this. This is literally just out of the gate, just out of the box, what Apache does, what its logging does, and it's being done at practically every website you go to is logging this information. So you'll see some logs if you've never seen them before, what they look like. To see them in real time, we'll be doing a tail. Obviously, you could cat the log and just look at kind of a static and then kind of refresh it that way, but to see what's in there. But we'll be doing a tail, and if you're not familiar with a tail, just think of it as having the file open and then in real time seeing data being written to it. These are some of the different variations of the command or the paths, I should say, for the access log. Note here the underscore versus a dot versus this whole thing here. Some people may have had issues with this. I was on Ubuntu, so I'm looking at this. That's how I'm getting to it, and you'll also see. But if that didn't work, maybe it's because you're using some different flavor of Linux, and that's why, and just try these other locations. Because it's important. We need to see that log to catch the cookie. The next thing we want to do is obviously find a site that is vulnerable to stored XSS. We'll be doing stored in this instance, not necessarily like reflected, where we're trying to pass XSS into some crafted like URL or link that we're then emailing to someone to hope they click. This is more like we found a site. This is more like hitting gold here, where we can actually store our cross-site script, and anytime anyone goes to it, that gets rendered to the browser. So this is a pretty awesome find, but again, we're using public sites that are notoriously like vuln for a reason. So this doesn't really reflect too much real world, but the concept is there. So these are the two we'll be using in our demos to show how this works. This is the script we'll be using. You'll need to just make some modifications that I tell you here about. Obviously, the meetup application does filter, right? So without these spaces, when I hit save, you'll just see like a caret. Everything else has been commented out because they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, in security, and not allowing JavaScript to be injected into a field. So again, I make a note here. You'll just copy the script. You'll delete these little spaces and the opening and closing tags, and then you're going to replace this chunk here with your current EC2 IP. And you'll see the full script that I'm using with my IP address in there. That's on my EC2 instance. And then lastly, we're just going to watch the tail. So essentially, again, we're looking at this access log that is by standard just installation of Apache. There's a logging aspect to it. Anyone that goes to the site, anyone that does anything is logged. This is kind of what part of the Apache log looks like. Actually, this is the whole thing. And you can see here that this is kind of like what we're interested in. We're going to call this a cookie. There's different levels of cookies, different types, different sort of configurations and security levels of cookies. But again, this is just kind of more of a foundational sort of walkthrough, not too into the weeds, but you get the picture of what we're able to do with, or how we're able to grab some information from users. So we can already kind of see here that we might have a username and a password, and we'll see that in a minute. The cookie will be in the GET request, and we'll dissect this script here in a second of kind of what it's doing. And then we'll have literally just a bunch of cookies. So first we'll talk about, what is a cookie? A cookie was kind of invented to store some information locally on the client's computer instead of the server for a few different reasons. But the most common sort of scenario people talk about is carts. When carts first hit the web, I mean, it's even still used today, but there needed to be a way where when you came back, whether you logged in or you were just there, that it somehow remembered who you were, what your settings were, what maybe your address stuff is, what you had in your cart. Cart is kind of more of usually like a short-term sort of instance. So there needed to be a way that the server could remember who you were, attach some sort of unique ID to you, and then some other information. And then so basically when you logged in or when you went to the site, that cookie gets sort of handed off, and then the server says, oh, I know who this person is. Let me go fetch all the data associated with them because of either a login or, again, just some information that's in that cookie. I won't go into too much detail because everyone knows how to read and look stuff up, but that's typically on the kind of the history of the cookies that came. Most people refer to like shopping carts, why it was used, things of that nature, and kind of what's stored in the cookie. And again, there's different types of cookies used for different things, and yeah, so there's some cookie information. Next up will be like cross-site scripting, or otherwise known as XSS. And again, a lot of the stuff is just going to be kind of high overview. I've done talks in the past that are a little bit deeper. Maybe I'll revisit those in the future. But at its core, XSS is a type of an injection attack, similar to like an SQL or parameter fuzzing, where there may be a field on the site, and we're able to inject something into the field that then gets rendered into the code, because a lack of some sort of security on the front end or back end essentially allows that script to now be a part of the site. So the server doesn't know that it's malicious or not. It runs it. It just assumes that it's part of the code because of the way that it's that sort of site is vulnerable, and it allows you to inject some script. That's how XSS works. That's how SQL works, and a few others like that. But again, at its core, we're simply taking JavaScript and injecting it into a field. We're running literally code. There's almost to no end of what you could do with it if it's vulnerable. And then if it's stored, now that is like a part of the site. That means you have literally altered the website for everyone that sees it. Anyone that goes to it in the world, if you have done this correctly, will basically see whatever the attacker had done, because it's now literally a part. It's been passed through the database. It is now being passed back to the browser. It is now one with the web application. That's sort of like the short of stored. And then reflected is more maybe not so much stored. It's not everyone is able to see it, but if they happen to have a link that was sent to them with the malicious script embedded in the link, then those would essentially be infected or a victim of said script. So if I was emailed a link and with the malicious payload in it, and I went and I clicked that link, then I would be subject to being a victim to that attack. However, if anyone else went to that exact same page on their own volition through normal means, they would not be a victim to said attack. So those are kind of the two differences. Think of reflected typically as like a link based. It's not stored. It's not persistent. Where stored is persistent. It's now a part of the website and it will be there forever until someone cleans that code up on the back end. So that's basically the nature of XSS. We'll be playing around with stored, and that's where we'll be able to kind of show once I run this exploit, anyone that wants to volunteer, including myself, will now be will essentially be grabbing my cookies because it's stored. So I won't be sending anyone any links to click on. I won't need to because this is a stored type of attack. So that's kind of the higher review of those two, cookies, XSS. We can talk more about that, but I just want to kind of get in and kind of get the demo working. So here we're at our EC2 instances. This is a dashboard that I just spun up just for this particular demo. So here's my quote unquote cookie monster. This is the server that I set up that's going to be catching said cookies. This is the IP address. So this is the address that I will need to put into here. I already have this on my clipboard, so I'll be pasting this, but that's essentially where that address will go in the script. Will be the public-facing IP address. If we were to go there, you would see this. Again, anyone that goes here, your IP will be recorded in the access log. That's the whole point of the access log. But this is what somebody would see for whatever reason if they dissected my my script, whatever, and they were like, oh, who did this? Where does this go? This is it's more humor based than anything. So this is my cookie monster. He's eating the cookies, and these cookies represent the real cookies we're going to be getting. So yeah, so this is the instance. Let me go ahead and spin that up, and once we log in, give me a second here. Hopefully you guys, I'm sharing the whole screen, so hopefully you guys should also see my terminal, correct? Someone can just type in the chat.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so so this is my EC2 instance. This is what is serving this web page up, located at this address. And we got to log in to get to see some of the things, to see the access log. We have to log into it. So this is that server. I'm going to sudo up. I'm root. Here's some things. I'm actually going to run tmux. This will help just splitting the screen, and just to kind of help things stay organized. So the first thing I want to do actually is let me get over to my Apache. And let me first just get rid of a lot of stuff because there's probably a lot of stuff in the access log. Let me get rid of that. You can see it's already rolled over. Let me now stop and start Apache just to get that log back. Free. That restarted the service, so now you can see I have now a default access log. It should be probably empty. We'll hit it a few times just to generate traffic, but nonetheless, this is the log we're going to tail. So we can see here, right off the bat, someone's been there at this time. They did a get. There's a 200. Probably just going to the page. There's nothing there. If I'll go back here, refresh, we'll see my IP, my VPN IP. You can see I did a get. We got a 200. This is just index page loads. This is what it looks like. So this is what basic traffic will look like. Anyone going there is going to see this, and I appreciate it. Whoever's going there just to put some traffic in, that's great. Now, what's cool, because again, this is logging anything, any request I put in. So like, there's been some CTFs I've done. I used to mess with a friend, that would like clearly just not found, but nonetheless, it got logged. So I could come back here and I could see like, oh man, I used to like leave messages. We used to have like this, the silly like hidden way of talking to each other through Apache logs. I've done CTFs where keys are in there. Awesome. So anyway, this is what it looks like. This is literally what's happening pretty much on any web server, whether it be a Apache or IIS. There's some sort of logging. You could feed these things into other SIMs and things like that to monitor traffic. You'll also see, we'll do a burb a derb at the end. Please don't do it now. We'll do one at the end. Just to see what that looks like. But nonetheless, this is how we're going to catch our cookie. So we have our web server up and running. We know that it's working. We can see that we're getting logs. It's doing what it's supposed to do. Again, I haven't done anything out of the ordinary. This is literally just when you set up Apache and the server's running, it's logging. So this is, again, there's no extra setup here for this. But this is how we're going to sort of see the cookie. And then once we see cookies, you notice here there's like a lot of information. IP, is that's important for us. Date, yeah. Cookie for sure. And then maybe like where else it's coming from or something like that might be important. And I'll tell you why in a minute, the way the attack kind of works, why you might be inclined to want to be looking at something in real time. Because of the nature of the cookies typically expire. So we're usually on borrowed time if we're getting cookies. We have to sort of probably react immediately. So it wouldn't do me any good to maybe log this stuff and come back a week later, see all these cookies, and then try and do something with them. Now, for our intents purposes, it might work because these are publicly vulnerable sites. But for most intents purposes, they're going to expire pretty quickly. So we would literally need to be looking at them as they come in and then trying to leverage those attacks. And that'll be another talk down the road about how to leverage the cookie to kind of hijack a session and just kind of walk in. But for our intents purposes, the cookie will be saving a username and a password, and we're going to kind of see that get passed to us. Again, there's we have to suspend some disbelief here for this to work in this environment, but the fundamentals there, the function is there, and how this works is all there. There just might be a few other steps to actually leverage the attack, but nonetheless, regardless of where you can get this to work, this will 100% work. So another thing that I might do as well is I might want to try and filter out some of this info. So I wrote a little script, a Python script to just kind of parse through some of the stuff that just gives us kind of what we want. I cannot confirm or deny that there's a need for cookies on the dark web, but if one were to collect them, they might want to format something similar to kind of what I have set up here. So let me in here. And so this is my cookie grabber. This is just going to basically, it's crude, but it's going to basically strip. It's just going to give us the IP, the date, the cookie, and then the URL it came from. Those are kind of the key things you really need to know if you've set something like this up on the web, maybe different. You found multiple sites that are vulnerable. You kind of need to know where they're coming from if you have some kind of elaborate setup. You need to know timestamps, again, because time is of the essence. And you might want to know the IP for whatever reason. Maybe you just want that, or maybe a third party wants to know that information. Cool. So we know we have our server working. We have Apache working. The access log is doing what it's supposed to do. And I wrote a little parser here just to grab a few things. Right now, you can see that none of this makes sense, although it looks like we have some stuff here. Maybe someone's done some encoding, and maybe that could get decrypted, and maybe it's a message. I'm just guessing. I don't know, but it could be. But for now, this is one of the sites we're going to use. I'm going to log out. It is in the list here, back here in your instructions. This is leveraging this PHP vuln site. It's a public site meant to be scanned by this company's DAS scanner, and it kind of shows you that what that thing can kind of do. It's a site that has known vulns. So you can log in here, test credentials, but we're hackers, right? So we wanna just do Old Faithful here, and because this is a vuln site, why not? So we're just gonna take our SQL injection, and we're just gonna bypass their login. So we'll just go ahead and log in anyway. So this is what you get when you log in. This is just technically quote unquote tests, the only user that exists on this site. This is your quote unquote profile page. And I know for a fact that this profile page is susceptible to cross-site scripting of the stored nature. So with that, I'm going to take my script. First, I'm going to maybe delete this. And I'm going to put in maybe like a message like, and then I'm going to put in our script. All right, now I'm going to update this. Now, once I update this, we should see an addition come to our Apache log. Update. Cool, it looks like it worked. So now if I go back here, there's my new entry, and there's actually our cookie. So anyone else, I would encourage to go, if they want to go to that site, to go to this site, log in, test, or SQL, whatever they want to do. And when they get to the profile, don't do anything, just go there. And you'll also see another cookie come in with a different address. So this is my VPN address, and this was me. So like, let's, here, I'll do this. So again, you just go to the php.vulnweb.com. You can just go to my profile. It'll ask you to log in. You can use test to log in. And then once you log in, you're going to hit the profile page. Boom. So somebody did that. Awesome. Thank you, sir or woman. So they logged in. They're just basically staring at, seeing the exact same thing that we're seeing. They're seeing like some random script thing here. This message is here because, again, it's stored. This may not be here, but nonetheless, the script is now part of the website. So like if I log out, now again, look here at whatever we have, you're going to see my .5 come in again. So I come here, well, we'll see. Because sometimes, again, this is public. So someone could beat me to the punch and come in and like reset something. So nope, it's still here. So now if you look here, you'll see that there it is again. I didn't enter the script in again because it's stored though. This script is now a part of the website. Anyone coming to this page, this script is going to run in their browser and send me their cookie. So go back here. So you can see now anyone again that logs in, it's a part of the site. And to prove it, I can just view page source, and you can come down here and see right here. This is my script. This is now part of the website. So until it disappears via like a refresh of the application, or someone literally just anyone can come in right now and just double click delete this and then update, and then it will update the script out of the page. It will go away. But until that happens, anyone coming to this website and then kind of logging in, and again, there's only one login, but let's pretend there were different logins. Let's pretend, whatever, because this is part of that page, or let's assume that it's a page not attached to a specific user. Maybe it's a page that everyone can see once they're logged in, but everyone is going to get a different cookie. So I might see different username. We can clearly see here in plain text that that's the username and the password. So I have that credential, and I know where it came from, and I know, again, I have my sort of cookie parser down here that's telling me like, okay, well, where did the cookie come from? What is the cookie? What time did it happen? And where did it come from? This is kind of the basic information you might need if you are an attacker, because maybe you've set up multiple sites, as you'll see in a second, that are susceptible to this vuln, and you're collecting cookies from a bunch of different sites you want to know. Now, again, we went back to time is of the essence. So I need to watch these as they come in because they might expire. So, and again, this will be for a future talk, but to leverage an attack, I would need to pretty much monitor them as they come in, and then immediately maybe spin up burp, input this cookie information into a header, and then just do a post or whatever, and then essentially walk in as that person. So I could essentially skip the login process because the cookie will tell the server I'm already logged in. It's giving the server the same information that was previously used in a small time span, and the server doesn't necessarily know. I mean, there's ways around that, IP logging, things like that. But in an easy world, the server is seeing what it believes it needs to see, which is that there's already a login information there. So essentially, we can pretend this is a bank that's susceptible to that, and I have now crafted this payload into a bank field, and you go and log in, and now a cookie has been created from the server and you, and that's how it knows it's you. That's how it knows you've logged in. That's why I don't have to keep logging in for every page request. It's all that stuff stored. But at the same time, that cookie has been sent over to me, and now I have that session cookie, so I could just kind of craft a request, maybe with Burp. That's a great sort of proxy tool, and then go to said website and then just log in. It would be like if you browsed to a different page. That would kind of essentially would be what it'd be like if you went back to the home page. You're already logged in, so you don't need to log in again. So if I just went to the home page with this cookie information, I would be already logged in. I would be as you. So there's a question: is there a way to track who dropped the cookie or dropped the script? So again, the Apache log, you might be able to see like before and after what had happened. Again, Apache's logging everything. It's logging IP addresses and timestamps. I don't know of a specific way, but you can technically look up the provider of the IP and possibly say, so and so did a request that did this. They belong on your IP or your network, Time Warner or Spectrum. Can you please, cease and desist? And then that provider will probably, suspend your internet or, I don't know, shoot you an email or something. So there's kind of a way like that. Again, everything's tracked. However, if you're going through some VPN, they might contact the VPN provider. Maybe they will or won't move forward with it. Maybe you're using a Tor to browse the site and then do that. And at that point, there's probably no way for them to find out who did it. So it's logged. So there will be an IP address, timestamp, and then the actual request to do it. But to find out exactly who did it might be a little harder, because of the nature of ways to kind of mask yourself on the internet. And then also who's willing to participate in tracking said person down, if they're into that or not. So this is one site that we know is vulnerable. Again, if I log out, I'll log back in and see if it's still there again, because this is public. It's still there. Cool. When I went there again before, somebody had tried to do something and screwed it all up, and literally this whole page was blank. And I could go into the kind of view source and see what they were doing, and it was a person probably just playing around. But you never know. I mean, you can deface an entire page with this script, because this script is now being fed and loaded into the page. So what's stopping you from basically writing a script that is a whole new website, or maybe that forwards you to something. One thing we'll try, let me update this and then see. You could also do like, you could see before, let's see. Or I can't type and talk at the same time. So this is one you could do that's going to show you the cookie in an alert box. It's supposed to. Let me log out. Delete this. Log out. Log back in. You can do like an alert box to show the cookie to kind of prove that it's the same cookie. Just your typical. We could do like one of these, update. So you can see right here, like that's a pop. That's definitely how we know the site's susceptible to like XSS. And a lot of scanners will inject something like that. And if you see a pop with a 200, then you know that basically the site's susceptible. So that's one way to like manually test some things that's stored. So basically, if I left that there, Actually, I won't update. I'll just log out and log back in and see if it took. Anyone that logs in will see that. Yeah. So see, like anyone, so that this will be like this forever until someone comes in and like deletes this out or whatever, which happens. So I'll update that. There's a cookie one. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm doing the update wrong, but it's also some browsers have XSS mitigation built in. Is it document.cookie or cookie dot? I think it's document.cookie. What this is supposed to do is do a pop-up of the cookie. Yeah, there we go. So we can see right here that we got the cookie and it's displaying it to us. This doesn't do us any good if we were an attacker, right? Like this is just displaying the cookie to the actual attacker. They would come here and be like, you know, oh crap, like what I just walk into and run away. We're actually storing this behind the scenes so that they would kind of never know that it's actually being sent. We're not displaying it to them, but that's kind of the first step just to see if a site is in fact vulnerable. You could do a little alert box type things and then get this thing to what we call pop, and then we can see. And this is essentially what's just being forwarded to us, the login info. So again, if I go back and grab the full script, the one that behind the scenes sends us stuff, we'll update that. We don't get a pop. Nothing happens. To our knowledge, nothing happens. We'll see if the site updates. And then essentially the cookie will come to us. So again, that's what we want to do. We want to grab the actual cookie. And so we can see right here, we just got it in there. And then the script will count down every 20 seconds and just kind of refresh the list. And it grabs us. And then also outputs this sort of parse to an actual list. And then said list could be looked at other times. Instead of going through all these logs, because not everything in here is going to be like the cookie you're looking for, again, because this server is logging anyone going to this site. So you're just going to see just random stuff come in that may not be important, like this, that's not a cookie, but all this stuff is. This, failed cookie, no, that's not, these aren't cookies. But nonetheless, at least it's parsing it in a manner that kind of looks coherent, and then also giving you like specific information, again, if you're an attacker, information that you might want, because if you have this set up all over the world, you'd like to know what site it came from so you could quickly go there. Otherwise, if you just have a cookie come in, that doesn't do you any good, unless you only have one site that you're doing it to. Then at that point, you would know where to go. But so to kind of show this in another manner, we're gonna go here, web scan test, another public vuln site. It's designed to be scanned by some sort of DAST application in this sense, App Spider. And from here, we're just gonna log in. I think it's admin. And cool. All right, so we're logged in. And so we're going to go cross-site scripting, and this is vulnerable. I know that the first name is vulnerable. Actually, I think all these fields are. So we're going to do this. This is stored kind of in a different way. I believe, I don't know really how much, maybe Matt might be able to chime in, but this is going to work, but it's not going to be stored in the sense that anyone comes back here, this isn't going to happen to. This is more of just a demo of this application being susceptible to XSS, and we're able to pass a cookie. If this was stored in a situation to where once you log in and you come to your profile and it's kind of there, then I would automatically grab it. But just to know that shows that it works on more than one web application. So we can see here. Let's see if that worked. And no, let me try one more time. Oh, wrong thing here. There we go. So we can see that the script was done. Basically, it's like welcome and then everything in parentheses. And then now you can see here that there's my IP. And now we have a different cookie, because that's just the way this cookie works. I mean, the cookies are cookies, but they're different types. Servers generate them differently. There's different information stored in cookies, but we can see here that this is what this cookie looks like from this application. So again, why we might want to parse that out is because, again, cookies are different. They contain different information, and it's nice to know where this cookie came from. So we can see this cookie came from this application, and we can see this cookie came from this application. So again, if I was an attacker, I'd probably want to have some way to pull out specific information that I'm looking for this info. So now anyone that has their script that has, basically should see that information when they paste it in. So it looks like, yeah, we got this address, and since it's all the same user for some of these sites, like this one here, it's always going to be test. There's only one user for this. But again, if there were different users, we would see the different usernames and passwords coming in. But because the nature of this site is only allowing you to set up one username by default, that's the one that we keep seeing. So no matter anyone that goes to that site, again, we're just going to keep seeing the same cookie come in. But typically, a cookie is going to be different for everyone, right? Because it's different information, different location, different information about that person, and definitely different login and password usually. So that's kind of the meat and potatoes of this is, how you can kind of craft a simple script. I mean, it's not difficult at all. It's actually a script that a friend of mine, a fellow Moose at Rapid7, I was talking to him like, hey, it'd be, how can I grab, what can I do? I was trying to craft a script that would email it, and that was difficult and all those other things. And he was like, oh man, I found this script that just sends it as a, kind of as a Git. And if we go back to the script to dissect it, basically what it's doing is it's basically saying like, we're going to load an image, and the image location is here, src. That's just kind of default for like where the image exists. And it's saying to get the image from this IP address. So we're doing a GET request, and it's essentially then attaching the cookie. So this is the JavaScript to just grab the cookie, and this plus is appending it to the GET request. And that's literally, I think as simple as I could probably explain it. So again, that's what the code is doing. So that's why it shows up as a GET, because the script is saying, hey, go get this image, and then go get it from here. This is where the image lives. And it's common for there to be a slash, like an image can live in some sort of path, right? So it's escaping, I believe, this to add this plus to link now the cookie. So it's basically IP slash, and then it's just sending garbage, which is your cookie, trying to get it. And because, again, Apache logs everything, it sees that as a GET. It's basically saying, hey, someone tried to go get this page. It just so happens that the page looks like a cookie because it is the cookie. But that's what the server doesn't know what's going on. The web server just knows that someone sent a request to it, and that's what it looked like. So yeah. Let's see. So far, have I lost anyone? Anyone have any kind of questions as like a higher overview of kind of what's going on, how we're grabbing the cookies, what it takes for kind of all this to work? That's pretty much the demo as a whole. But I can definitely go back, go over some things, kind of open up the floor for discussion.
I got it pretty much. Thank you.
Awesome. So obviously you don't have to go quite in as depth as writing some kind of parser thing, but I think again in the real world an attacker would need to move quickly, and so this just kind of cleans it up from looking at all this. If I just look at this one log, I can just kind of see like specifics of what I'm kind of getting, what like the thing that I need most, which is the session where it came from and like the time. Let's see. So yeah, that's the gist of it. There's a lot more that you can do with this, and again, real world, it's going to be a lot more difficult. But at its core, the script is going to work regardless. It's just probably a matter of finding like a legitimate site that's susceptible. There's plenty of them out there. I mean, XSS is still OWASP top 10 and probably will be for a long time. Although it is moving down. I think it used to be like 3, now it's maybe 7 or something, or maybe even further down the line. But it's still a thing. I see it every day. So yeah, it's still out there. It's just hard finding them, but there's ways to do that as well. But like I said, you can do a cheap little alert box. There's free scanners out there that you could do. Obviously, you shouldn't be scanning someone's site that you don't have permission to or that you don't own, but there are scanners that can kind of tell you that a site may or may not be vulnerable to that type of attack. You can craft together some manual things. Again, these are public sites, so we have permission by default. And I'm running this on my own server, although the server isn't doing anything illegal. It's just catching requests. So yeah, but I would just say, obviously, this is for educational purposes only. Use at your own risk. Well, yeah, that's pretty much it, I think. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. Some ways to mitigate, important. Obviously, like, yeah, it's great to know how to do something, but how it works, why it works is awesome, and also at least ideas how you sort of fix things. You should kind of know. Probably the most common rule would be like to not allow certain things, but when it comes to like sanitizing, you're right. You can sort of do things like this. Like, clearly, it would be really hard for my script to work if it didn't allow carrots. Like, if this field didn't allow certain characters, it wouldn't work. There might be some ways to get around that, but by default, it makes it a lot tougher if I can't put carrots and brackets in this field. And again, there's really the only field that should probably allow that might be a password field. But all that stuff should be getting some sort of like encoding happening to where now it's basically like this. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention about this script is the escape also, I believe, is turning this into a string to be passed. Like, it has to put it in a format that can be like attached and sent along as a request, kind of like in a coding language where you have like strings or and things like that. Like, they have to be kind of declared before they work. That just kind of reminded me about that. But anyway, so these are some things how you can like encode. So basically, a caret is now turned into ampersand amp or ampersand whatever, semicolon is the and sign. So a caret would look like this instead of a caret. What's happening is there's no filter, so a caret is a caret, and the ending caret is a caret. The ending caret is a caret. So if this was happening on the back end, my script wouldn't work. But because it's not, my script is able to work. And these are just, again, some examples. But if there was some sort of front end filtering or back end filtering, the script wouldn't work. So that's kind of like a high overview of how you would mitigate some types of these attacks. And so depending on the field you're in, you might not have to necessarily go down at a granular level of, oh yeah, on this line here, this level of code, you should be fixing this. It's just more of a best practice to at least sort of to be able to talk a little bit of the talk of, hey, this is how you would mitigate this, or hey, this is how this whole attack is happening. We're basically injecting some JavaScript that's being stored, and then so now anytime anyone goes to this page, that JavaScript is running and then running some sort of malicious code because the server doesn't know otherwise. There are some browsers will by default stop a lot of this from happening. Some browsers prevent the actual pop-up. It just depends on the browser and how it's configured or the site. But nonetheless, like, it's a very common vuln, unfortunately. But also, I kind of wanted to do this one, not that it's super easy, but basically it's fairly easy. And then two, just to also just let people know and be aware that there's a lot of things that may be going on in the background that you may not be aware of. Even as simple as logging. There's a lot of people out there that don't know that servers log. But this is exactly what's going on right here. I mean, this is an Apache log. So this is what's happening. Pretty much any server running Apache is logging. And it doesn't take too much to, like when people talk about selling your data, well, what is it? Well, yeah, there's cookie data, but there's also just a ton of IP data that gets sent back to, some other farmer and then says, oh, well, they're at this, URL and next thing you know, you're seeing ads for stuff that, because you were searching on some other site because everybody's, selling everything. But that's how they're getting a lot of that. And that's why a lot of new sites, I think part of maybe some kind of privacy thing or something will tell you at the end, there'll be like a little footer note that says, by viewing this site, you accept our cookie policy, which is basically saying we're selling all your info. But you have to sort of accept that to continue browsing that website. Cookies are really, really important, and daily transactions, just in security as a whole. And there can be a lot of good information in them. And this is just one demo of how to grab said cookie. And again, with stored XSS, anyone visiting this site is going to trigger that again, unless someone comes in and changes it. But feel free to play around with this application with XSS. Another good one is the DVWA, the Damn Vulnerable Web App, that has a good tutorial for stored XSS. That's actually kind of where I started and learned a lot of these things. So finding the public stuff is hard, but there's plenty of sites out there to find legitimate sites that are are specifically for being attacked via either some third-party vendor's application, or playing around or whatever. And again, for this instance, this is for Rapid7's App Spider to basically scan this site, and then it'll show you a bunch of things. You can kind of see here what this site is vulnerable to. But yeah, you can see that there's the vulnerability route. We have a ton of stuff in here. So this is another site you can kind of play with. Persistent cross-site. So yeah, cool site to play with, to learn, sharpen your web app skills. But for us, it was just a good demo to show that there is stored XSS happening in some sort of sense, and we're able to grab some cookies from it. You'll see here, these are the longer ones versus the shorter ones. Well, you can see here, this is the cookie you're always going to see from this site, and this cookie you're probably always going to see from WebScan test, just by the nature of how they work. So yeah, so that's it. That's how you can steal some cookies, and then what you do with them is your own prerogative. But still a fun exercise, and exercising your XSS skills. And then if build your own web app, look about mitigating it. That's a whole other story. And then also like what you would do with these cookies. Again, a quick overview would be, I can now take this info, cram it into my browser, and then walk in as that person, because this is how that person is identified to the server. So if I have the same thing, that basically I'm also that I've assumed your identity or your session. And so now, again, that's one way to circumvent like a login. But again, you have to be quick. Time is of the essence, because again, cookies typically expire, especially say like the person goes in, does whatever he's doing, and then closes the browser. That cookie is supposed to be destroyed. So they can't just open up the browser and just walk in again without logging in. So again, why time is of the essence. And again, depending on like what your goal is, some things may be limited. You might just be able to walk in as that person, and all you can really see is like their card. But because none of the other payment information is stored, on in the cookie or on that server. So there's going to be limitations, but nonetheless, you'd be surprised that there might be some sites to do the nefarious things. So we got a question: what tool do you use? I would use Burp. I think what is it? OWASP's app is the kind of open source version, if you will, or alternate to that. And then in Burp, you could essentially, it's a proxy, so you could go to that site, and then it's going to give you a bunch of information. It's going to give you, let's say, your session. Say you log in, it's going to give you your cookie info. But say you want someone else's, you want to be someone else on that website, then you could just swap out the cookie info, and then push that, and then now you are that person. So again, you would see whatever that person might have saved on that site in that session, maybe their address or some contact information, maybe again whatever's in the cart. Oh yeah, good point. So yeah, if somebody wants to run Derb, just to see what it looks like. I have it open if no one has a Kali instance up and ready to run a derb against this IP address, my cookie monster, just so you can see in case anyone's into web apps, security or hacking. Derb is a very common tool that we use to enumerate pages. It's kind of a dictionary type list of what pages may exist on an application. And so you'll know when it happens. If somebody, let's see here, there we go. Yeah, that's what derb looks like. Pretty obvious, right? Like, I mean, unless you're, maybe Microsoft or, some top, I don't know, super popular company that just gets that much traffic normally. That's not normal. Plus, you can also just look at like the request, right? We're getting all these 404s. That's like, hey, we just got sprayed. Pretty obvious because you could see like what the get was, right? So derb, again, it's dictionary. So it doesn't know what the website has. It just knows that here's a list of things we're going to try that are common. And then if we get a 200 in derb, if you've ever used it, it kind of like notes that in the list. And then kind of keeps moving. And then once it kind of finishes, it goes back through and says, okay, what are the subdirectories that we got that maybe have a response code of 200? So any 404, most people in the web space know that like that's, like forbidden or doesn't exist or whatever. 300s are like usually moved and things like that. 200s are usually like successful. Like, yeah, this page exists. So pretty obvious. Now, if I had this, I used to have some of my apps fed into a type of SIM where it's basically ingesting Apache log or Apache logs, and then anytime there was a 404, I would get an alert, right? So if I was alerting on that, I would have clearly gotten an alert because it's 404 like city here. So and I could say, oh, okay, well that's odd because yeah, somebody might accidentally enter in like a weird address or mistype in something in the path and generate that. But for to get that many hits that quickly, it's pretty obvious what's happening. So there's also ways to mitigate that, but I just wanted to show you guys, if you are running derb and you're doing, trying to figure out ways to be stealthy, there are ways you can set milliseconds in between each. So you might be waiting days to get a result, but you could essentially still map out an application with derb and not be so obvious. Because again, if this was a public site, which it is, and there's a lot of traffic, I'm gonna get blended. But even on a public site with a lot of traffic, you're not going to see that much traffic from the same IP like that, right? That's going to kind of stand out. So again, you're still probably going to get busted. But if you're doing, like I said, if you're doing the millisecond time interval, then you probably won't be as noticeable. I mean, depending on, again, it's kind of like how many failed logins before some alert goes off somewhere. I kind of hear, depending on how the person set it up, for how many 404 alerts before they're notified. But I just wanted to, again, let you guys know what an Apache log looks like, because it's a part of this whole demo. And then what does a derb attack look like and why they're so what we would call noisy. Just like an nmap attack or an nmap scan, I shouldn't call it an attack. It's going to be a lot of traffic coming from one IP address. And there's no different here, pretty much. A lot of traffic coming from one IP address. Yeah, so thanks for bringing that up, Christian, before I forgot. Fun stuff. And that's pretty much concludes the demo, but I'm more than happy to hang out, answer some questions. I don't know, play around with whatever. If someone's got stuck somewhere, I'm more than happy to try and help move along that process. Obviously, all the instructions are on the meetup page. Those will stay there. Yeah, that's it. Any questions, concerns, thoughts, all that stuff? I do want to say I appreciate all you guys and girls showing up to this. This was a fun one. Hopefully you guys are able to duplicate it and then kind of expand on it. So, well, that's it for now. That's all I got.